Welcome to Conversations with America. I'm Father Matt Malone, President and Editor-in-Chief of America Media, and I am pleased to welcome His Eminence Vincent Cardinal Nichols, who is the Archbishop of Westminster in London and President of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of England and Wales. His Eminence is in New York to receive the Path to Peace Foundation Award on behalf of the Santa Marta Group, which works to end human trafficking. Welcome, Your Eminence.
Thank you.
So I wonder if we could begin by you're telling us a bit about why this is such a great problem and why the Church has an interest in helping to solve it.
Well, human trafficking is a vast international criminal network, and therefore it's a very complex problem, and there are many different ways of addressing it. One is just to look at it as a crime. It's the second most profitable criminal activity in the world, generating something like $140 billion profit for traffickers every year. You can also look at it...
And by comparison, what kind of industry would make that kind of
Well,
profit?
we were told the other day that the 4 top airlines taken together make a £30 billion profit, whereas human trafficking is a profit bringing in 140 billion.
Wow.
So it is a huge criminal activity. But then I prefer to look at it, as a human tragedy, through always a focus on the person of the victim, and whether that victim is, as 60% are women caught in prostitution, or children in forced labour in Africa, or young men who are trafficked in order to pick flowers and vegetables every spring and held in the most appalling circumstances. It's the victim that also is a very, very, very crucial focus of attention for anybody who wants to understand and begin to act against this wound, this crime that defaces humanity.
How can we discover ways, learn ways of not being a part of the problem?
Well, we have to become more conscious that this is such an aspect of our human society today. The first meeting of the Santa Marta Group that we had in Rome in 2014, the Pope gave a rather impromptu interview to one of the British news channels. And he used 2 phrases which have stuck with me. His first phrase was, human trafficking is a wound in the body of humanity. And then he developed that a bit and said, it's a wound in the body of Christ. And it's that sense that we're part of a commonality, we're part of a common humanity. And we have to understand that the victimization of people for our benefit is actually part of who we are. So there is that, if you like, a kind of an existential philosophical dimension to it. We cannot separate ourselves from each other. But then the second phrase he used was, in a way, even more telling, because he said, this tragedy, this evil, will not be conquered until we have learned to weep again.
Right. Until
we have learned to weep at the damage, at the tragedy of so many people.
Tragedy.
Yeah. And so, we weep when our heart is touched, and our heart is touched normally through our eyes or through what we hear. Right. And so we have to open our eyes, we have to open our minds, we have to begin to inform ourselves. And then, yes, there are consumer choices that we can make. Yes, there is a participation we can play, for example, in what car washes we use. Right. I say to people in London, if you are getting your car washed for £5 and there are 4 men working on it, you can be absolutely sure they're not being paid. Right. It just doesn't make any sense. And so
there are probably, there are lots of good and decent people who
Sure.
would go to that car wash and,
Sure.
and have no idea that
Sure.
that is the case and not even think to ask the question.
No, and they would do that quite understandably because it's on the high street,
Right.
because it's been there for ages,
Right.
and you don't expect criminal activity to have a shop front. And as Kevin Hyland says, you know, if somebody opened an off-license, a liquor store, without a license, they'd be closed down within hours.
Right.
You know, if somebody opened something which was clearly putting their employees at risk through health and safety, they'd be closed down.
Right.
But because we still haven't got this sense of human trafficking as a grave offence, then these things just float by. And it's up to the citizen, it's up to the local authorities, the local government agencies, to begin to treat this as a serious criminal activity, a seriously profitable criminal activity, and take action. It would only take, you know, a couple of hours, one policeman to go in there and say, give us your tax returns. This is finished, this is closed. So there's a corporate effort, a real cooperation between citizens whose minds are opened, whose eyes are opened, local authorities, the police forces, to say this is a criminal activity we can now begin to identify and we want to chase. That's what we have to get to. We don't need grandstanding. We don't need government representatives making promises and then not keeping them. We don't need CEOs saying they'll do this and this and this through their business network and then giving it a token resource. We need some brutal honesty because this is a brutal crime we're against.
Indeed it is, and it's an extraordinary problem, and the solution is complex. And but thank you for your leadership in helping the church to take charge of this.
Okay.
Conversations with America highlights important stories at the intersection of the church and the world. Please join this conversation at americamedia.org.